Hi, I'm Rochelle Carey in for Femi Oke, and you're in the stream. With Afghanistan now under Taliban control, what does the future look like for Afghans, in particular women and girls? And what are the thousands of Afghans right now who want to leave their country but cannot get out? And what does this say about U.S. foreign policy, past, present, and future? There's a lot to get into today. We do want to hear from those of you watching on YouTube, so just leave a comment, leave a question in the live chat. We do monitor that. We will read them, and you can be in the stream as well. So it took the Taliban just 10 days to sweep across Afghanistan and regain control of the country. The group's quick rise to power has left millions of Afghan citizens in fear over the uncertainty of what Taliban rule will look like. Unconfirmed reports of Taliban fighters entering the homes of Kabul residents have put people on edge.
I have family and friends across the country sharing different stories with me. For example, in Kabul, they do have checkpoints across the city where they actually go in and check cell phones to see if there's any sort of United States affiliation. We're also seeing the Taliban go into different communities, requesting food from local restaurants and from just regular households. And especially we're seeing that they're going into neighborhoods and marking houses that are minorities. And so that's very concerning. I know in the last 2 years, we've seen the Taliban really change their tone, try to turn a new leaf. But in reality, this is the same organizations that we've known. They're oppressive. They want their dominance to be known and they want to be recognized. And I know surely we're going to see the old Taliban come out.
All this as the United States concludes its pullout from the country, feverishly evacuating American personnel and Afghan allies. So what lies ahead? Joining us from Afghanistan to discuss this is Pashtana Durrani. She's an educator and the director of Learn. That's an education nonprofit focusing on Afghan women and girls. And in the United States, Brett Bruin, president of Global Situation Room and the former director of global engagement at the White House during the Obama administration. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining us. So, Pashtana, I'm not sure if you were listening to what it was that Leada Azim was saying, but does that ring true to you? What are you hearing about what the situation is right now in Afghanistan?
I just got in touch with my cousin, and that's he told me that right now, and people are claiming that, oh, they didn't do anything, everything is calm, and it's that they're just taking away weapons. My cousin just told me that the bikes that their people, servants had, that those were taken. Apart from that, electric generators, whatever they could find at home, they took all of those. And he keeps on telling me that, even appliances are not safe around them. So that's the ground reality from Kandahar right now, just a few minutes before the show.
What is the word for people that want to leave? Not for American personnel to leave, but for Afghans that want to leave. How are you all communicating with each other, getting word to each other? If somebody wants to leave right now, do they even know what to do?
No, it's not that something that everybody has a backup plan. Okay, when I am supposed to leave, what should I have in my bag or whatever. I mean, majority of the people, I don't even know if you have seen the airport videos. They're horrifying, mortifying. Have you seen that children are crying? Children are being left behind. People are murdering each other to get over to the gate. I'm in different groups. All these groups keep on saying to each other that this road is closed, that road is closed. So there is no, a mechanism for the people who want to flee, or there is no, even the regional countries, they are not opening up their borders for the Afghan refugees. So it's chaotic right now.
So, Brett, when you listen to what Pashtana is describing as chaotic, what is it that you see and hear as a planner when you hear that?
Well, it's interesting to hear that account. And then I just got done listening to the Deputy Secretary of State, Wendy Sherman, brief from the podium at the State Department. And her spin on this is, well, anyone who wants to can certainly come to Hamid Karzai International Airport and we will process them. But I know, not just as a planner, but somebody who served as an American diplomat across Africa, in Iraq, Venezuela, that's a lot harder on the ground. And that, unfortunately, I think is the disconnect we have seen and are seeing between the Biden administration, who on the one hand has, theory and slogan, and on the other hand, the reality, certainly, of the women and girls in Afghanistan. I mean, it is heart-wrenching. It is heart-wrenching that for 20 years, We told them to stand up, to be bold, and then we just walked away. And the word from the White House, the word from the president himself is not just going to be damaging. And I'm looking at this as somebody who, handled American global engagement for a couple of years. It's going to be damaging around the world. I mean, girls in Nigeria. I remember when we built Let Girls Learn after the kidnapping of the schoolgirls in Chibok, Nigeria. I mean, they have got to be worried as they're watching what's happening in Afghanistan. I think it's disastrous.
So I'm going to read a couple of comments that we're also getting from people on YouTube that are watching right now. Heidi Abdullah says it's too soon to judge if they are evil or the saviors of Afghanistan, meaning the Taliban. We'll get back to that in just a moment. And then another comment from someone, No says massacres have actually been happening for 20 years. It's just that nobody cared. What about that, Pashtana? What do you make of? There's obviously a lot of dialogue about this. It's getting a lot of news coverage in the U.S. But for years, Afghanistan was not something that many people beyond a few reporters actually talked about and gave much attention to. What do you make of the fact that it's getting all this attention now, whereas it may have been neglected for so long, as something that we should care about?
I am so sorry. I keep on getting another. Yeah, my apologies on that. Can you repeat?
No, absolutely. I said, what do you make of the fact that now there's so much attention being paid to what's happening in Afghanistan? Rightly so, but for years and years, it wasn't something that was front and center as an important topic, even though there were thousands of Afghans who were losing their lives and thousands of American soldiers losing their lives as well.
See, at the moment, you have to understand that Afghanistan, Afghan women and everybody right now is just confused. They don't know what the future awaits them, right? There are a lot of different narratives coming out from Kabul. Everybody's peaceful, things are normal, the Taliban are nice and polite, but then you go to provinces and you see the real faces where you see that schools are being closed down. I just got news from my own province, and they're telling me that the private schools are being closed down, the posters are being torn off. And then at the same time, the same thing is happening in Herat, where girls cannot go to school. So you have to understand that, for 20 years, for 2 decades, we had to give up on all those people. My own district, we lost around 2,300 people so that we could live as IDPs in Afghanistan within another district, just for that. Can you imagine the things that we had to go through? And now, post 2,300 men with all those widows, we are left between, in a situation where we don't know how to respond to the chaos. Where we don't know where do we stand, where we don't know who to reach out to exactly. So it's chaotic, it's messy, and at the same time, we are questioning our alliances right now because the Taliban they were not even allies, and today they were brought in the U.S. Military plane, right? So we have to question those alliances.
Brett, the Taliban is not an unknown quantity. I mean, we have a comment from someone that says we don't know yet if they're evil or saviors. It's obvious that they're definitely trying to change their image. When they came into Afghanistan in the 90s, there wasn't a lot known about them, but they absolutely have a track record now to know who they are. Are you buying this new and improved image they're trying to put to the world? And what is their actual motivation? Because it's clear from what we're hearing from Pashtana that regardless of what they're telling people are still terrified on the ground.
Yeah, and I currently work in public relations, so I can certainly detect a PR campaign when I see one. And I think that's precisely what you have. Yesterday's press conference in Kabul by the Taliban was an effort to try and, quite frankly, just gloss over some of those other less savory and less, quite frankly, justifiable positions that the Taliban continues to take. And there were a lot of generalities. Women will have their place under Sharia law. At the end of the day, and this is where I want to be very specific, I think the American administration, Europeans, other allies need to seize the moment now. And I know there's a lot of leaders watching from around the world. This is the point at which you need to be very specific about the demands that we're making on the Taliban, not just in general that support women and girls, but what are the things that we as an international community are going to ask of the Taliban, and we're going to hold them accountable for implementing
But I want to ask you, does the U.S., what leverage does the U.S. still have?
Well, look, we still have troops at the airport in Kabul. We still have air power. And we still, quite frankly, have a lot of carrots that can be offered. You've heard the American administration speak of them over the last several days, that if they want not just diplomatic recognition, but aid, all of that has to be made contingent on very specific policies, programs, and steps that the Taliban are going to take. And let's not forget, I mean, you mentioned we know who the Taliban are. We've also seen over the course of the last couple of years in negotiations on this very withdrawal that the Taliban have not made good on their promises. So I think there are a lot of questions, and we absolutely have to verify. We absolutely have to ensure that at this moment, we are making very clear our expectations, and the Taliban know it.
So there has been a lot of talk and a lot of concern in particular about what the Taliban being back in power actually means for women and girls. And they had talking about PR, obviously they had a huge press conference yesterday. And there's a couple of, something I've been following on Twitter, someone posted a picture of all the journalists that are at the press conference. And one comment specifically says, so where are the female journalists in today's press conference? There was at least one female journalist there, someone from Al Jazeera, Charlotte Bellis, who actually put the question to the Taliban, what does this mean for women and girls? So I want to play what the Taliban had to say, and then we can talk about it on the other side. Okay.
As I mentioned earlier, when it comes to, we are going to allow women to work and study. We have got frameworks, of course. The women are going to be very active in the society, but within the frameworks of Islam.
What does that mean to you, Pashana, when you say within the framework of Islam? Because Islam means different things to different people.
I mean, I just find it very vague every time they use Islam as a scapegoat for whatever their patriarchal, egoistic, male-dominated, theories are. I just find it funny and at the same time insulting when they use Sharia or Islam to scapegoat everything that they have to say. I mean, what was un-Sharia right now in Afghanistan? What were women doing that was not under the Sharia law? Afghanistan is an Islamic country. Afghan women are, majority of them are Muslim. So they were doing everything according to the Sharia. I mean, it's an Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. So what was it that they think is now not acceptable under the Sharia law? And I find it funny every time people in the international media ask me if they have changed. Yes, they have changed. Now they can speak English and they have a very good PR, but other than that, they haven't changed. From Kabul, apart from Kabul, do you see any changes? Are women going to university in Herat? Are there girls going to school in Kandahar? Are they going to work in Kandahar? If so, then yeah, they have changed. If not, then they have not changed, and they are sticking to that, and they are using Sharia, Islam as vague terms as possible just to get their way.
And there actually are already reports that we're seeing of women being forced from their jobs, particularly from banking jobs. We have some very specific examples of that. Brett, I wonder if you think, there may be cases of women being forced from their jobs. There also may be cases, quite frankly, of women just being scared and almost self-censoring and not even leaving the house anymore. How common do you think that is right now?
Oh, absolutely. And look, I mean, there are a lot of families as well that are just going to try and keep their female members of the family home until it is clearer what the rules will be, what the Taliban means when they say that women will have certain freedoms. And this, I think, is obviously a very dangerous and delicate situation where, one of the things as an American diplomat that I learned is you have to make beachheads. And I think in this moment, it's really important for both Afghan women, but also for the international community, as I was saying earlier, to stand up and to say, we insist that these rights, that these freedoms are protected, and that we are going to have, under Taliban rule, a modicum of freedom. And right now, there are a number of areas in which I think, specifically, as my co-panelists mentioned, girls need to be back in school tomorrow. Not next week, not next month, and that ought to be conditioned on any engagement that the international community is going to have, and certainly any aid that we're providing.
I want you to listen to something from Ahmad Rashid Salim. He's an author and an academic scholar talking about what he thinks the people of Afghanistan need, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
What the Afghan people need and want is not the Taliban. They want accountability, and they want the international community to have the will to not sacrifice another generation of Afghans to death, destruction, displacement, and loss. Just because a number of corporations and a number of countries want to capitalize on the rich resources and geopolitical location of Afghanistan. The Afghan people deserve justice, and they demand autonomy and a right to fair and free elections and the removal of the Taliban from the helms of government.
Pashana, what does justice mean and look like for you when he says justice? What would that be for you?
Justice is holding Taliban accountable for whatever they did to us for the past 20 years just because we went to schools, just because we were working for the betterment of Afghanistan. That is justice. We are really going to talk about justice. Justice is we are going to hold accountable all the corrupt leaders that the America and the West empowered in the past 2 decades over all the civilians of Afghanistan, and they looted Afghanistan. That's justice. What is justice in the fact that 50% of the country has to lose all their rights just because a few men in presidential palace changed? How is that even justice? And at the same time, we have to understand that Afghan women right now need a surety more, need solidarity more, needs international community to stand by them, right? In the past, what they did was the international community empowered the elite women of Afghanistan. Right now, the civilians, the ruler women, they are suffering, and this international community has a leverage to use that and stand in solidarity. But I'm not sure what they are doing because it has been days and the international community has not even spoken a word. I mean, like getting to an airport is not something that every woman would want. Not everyone wants to leave this country, but they are forced to do so. So there are chances that the international community should stand up and be just towards the women of Afghanistan. That's justice.
Brett, what does the U.S. Pashana said a lot there. What does the U.S. owe Afghanistan? What does the U.S. specifically owe women and girls? And you brought up an interesting point a moment ago. Who is watching this? What are the takeaways that other countries, even other armed groups, are getting from this? I mean, the Taliban played the long game for 20 years, and they ended up getting what they wanted. Yeah, and look, I think, in my view, the United States of America owes those brave women of Afghanistan an enormous debt because they were an inspiration. I mean, I remember sitting at the State Department at the White House and hearing the stories of, countless tales of bravery. And yet, unfortunately, President Biden has now said, it's just not worth it. It's not worth us spending our time and making the investment. And I don't care, how much spin is put on it from the White House podium. We have abandoned them. And the cost, as you rightly raised, let me ask you that. Let's pick that apart a little bit, though. Abandon them in the sense that you're saying the U.S. should still be there, or abandon them in the sense of the way this was handled? Well, I think in both senses. First, we, I believe, should have an enduring presence there. That was critical, as we've seen just in the last several days, to shoring up the confidence and the capabilities of the Afghan military. But for how long? Government. Well, look, we have more troops currently in Spain than we did have in Afghanistan this year. I think, with a
small presence, certainly.
But
with,
over the past 20 years, there weren't thousands of U.S. troops dying in Spain. There were thousands of U.S. troops dying in Afghanistan over the past 20 years.
Except this year, there were no combat casualties. So my argument would be that that was worth the price. That was worth ensuring that women and girls could go to school, that we could have certain rights, and yes, work towards a more perfect form of government in Afghanistan. You could have elections, and the people decide, even as imperfect as those were.
Brett, but I don't want to interrupt. Pashtana wanted to interact. Go ahead, Pashtana.
Please, go ahead.
See, here's the thing. I personally am an Afghan, and I personally believe that, and don't mind me for saying this, that I personally think that American troops are not superheroes, that are not Marvel heroes. Every time there is something on the world happening and the aliens attack, and they are the ones, saving the whole world. That's not, in reality, that's not true, right? So they couldn't have done that in Afghanistan either. What the U.S. could have done is didn't legitimize the Doha deal, didn't stand by when the Taliban were abusing Afghans, right? When they were abusing the civilians in the past 3 weeks. I lost 3 family members in the past 3 weeks, and the U.S. stood by every person who was losing their family members in Spin Boldak, in Panjwai, in Jeri. So I'm asking this, not from the U.S., but throughout the world. All these Western powers, they call themselves the leaders of the world, and then they stand by. And it's not like Joe Biden had to put in a lot of money, a lot of effort or something. He just had to pick up a phone and call the Taliban's office in Qatar and tell them, stop abusing the civilians, or we don't legitimize your deal. But he didn't do it. That makes me want to question their leadership. That makes me want to question the fact that America's presence in Afghanistan, was it worth it? Was it worth their time, that they lost all these people all this time and invested so much in Afghanistan? And at the end of the day, they couldn't even pick up the phone and pressurize the Taliban into not abusing the civilians, into not displacing them.
Pashtana, you sound very frustrated, but what I'm also hearing is you sound abandoned. Am I putting words in your mouth? That's how it sounds. That's what you're describing.
I don't feel abandoned by Joe Biden. I didn't vote for him. I do feel abandoned by right now. I'm going to be honest. I didn't vote for an American president. That was the American people's choice. And in democracy, that's how it works, and that's fine. But the fact that I voted for President Ghani and he leaves the country in all this chaos, he didn't stand by.
Pashtana, let me ask you, have you watched what he said today? I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
What is your reaction? He says that the reason he left is because there was going to be violence and bloodshed. He says that he did not take all the money that he's accused of taking. What is your reaction to what you heard? And we're almost out of time, but I do want to hear what you think of that.
See, the fact that he didn't take the money. He didn't want the bloodshed, but then why did he enable corruption the past 4 years, all this time that he was in power? Why did he bring in people with double, triple passports to Afghanistan who were not sincere towards Afghanistan? Why did he let the ruler people of Afghanistan let go of them? He didn't contact them. He didn't take them in confidence. He literally abandoned Afghanistan in the process, and now he says that he didn't do any of those things. That's shameful. That's abusive. That's abusive towards the Afghan civilians. So I'm sorry if I'm going to say it again and again. The West enabled the corrupt leaders. The West enabled Taliban, and they keep on doing this to Afghan women and Afghan civilians.
Brett, we've got about 30 seconds. You can respond. I'm sorry.
I think I can rightfully say, having both voted for and supported Joe Biden, that I feel abandoned. I expected better, and I'm sorely ashamed right now. And I will continue to do everything I can to raise my voice and to draw attention to it, because I don't think that what we're doing in Afghanistan is in our interest, and certainly not in the interest of women and girls in that country, the region, and around the world.
Okay, that's going to be the final word on this discussion for now, but we will obviously continue the discussion. Brett Bruen, thank you so much for joining us. Pashtana Durrani, thank you both for joining us. And again, there will be many more conversations to have about this. That is all for now, though. Thanks to our guests. Thank you to our community as well for participating. We had many, many comments on YouTube. I tried to get as many of them read as I can. So keep sending them. We'll continue the dialogue. That's all for now. Until next time, take care.